There's nothing that could go wrong for either player. And remember, this is round robin play. There doesn't necessarily need to be players doing this well. They've distanced themselves this weekend, and then in many cases for Paulo, just from everybody else as well, on 28 points at this point against the best players in the world. But yeah, these two are just absolutely smashing it. Brad's going to kick things off with Cauldron Familiar, and it looks like we don't have any the hand for Paulo Vitor just yet, but if we get that, fine. And it looks like we've actually just don't have his feed for game one, which gives us a really cool opportunity here, Cedric, to put ourselves in Brad Nelson's shoes and know the information that he has, but none of the rest. And that's something I actually really don't mind it when this happens every once in a while. Generally it's better to see both. But here it's kind of cool because we get to really, it becomes so easy to make decisions when you know what your opponent has. And we get to look at things from Brad's perspective, not knowing what Paulo has.
I mean, at the very least, Brad knows that, all right, my opponent has access to a Bone Crusher Giant as soon as the next turn because Stomp is resolved. It took care of that copy of Priest of Forgotten Gods. So Brad could have played Dreadhorde Butcher on turn number 2, elected to go with Priest. I think for pretty obvious reasons in this matchup. If that card gets online against Gruul, it's very hard for Gruul to beat. Now Dreadhorde Butcher is starting to grow a little bit. It's a 2-2. And as you mentioned, we do get to kind of play that game of hidden information as Brad is having to play right now. So we get to really step into Brad's shoes here and see what his thought process is going to be and perhaps what our thought process would be if we were him in a very similar situation.
And we see a nice turn here for Paulo Vitor. Damo to Rosa went from having no board state whatsoever to Burning Tree Emissary plus land plus Bone Crusher Giant. Now it's going to be Midnight Reaper, though, for Nelson. And he's just going to pass the turn back, leaving the Dreadhorde Butcher behind. Something you actually rarely see. That card tends to get in basically every turn because it's a must block. But here, the Bone Crusher Giant keeping it at bay. And speaking of getting in the red zone, Paulo Vitor knows what to do with this Gruul deck. Send him in.
You ever heard of Embercleave?
That's right. And this is why I like this, Ed, because that's what you're thinking about if you're Brad, right? Hey, look, an untapped land. There's 4 lands, 2 creatures attacking. I can do the math here and realize that Embercleave's a distinct possibility. In fact, you would call it a likelihood here, right? You would just play as if Paulo had it.
I would play as if Paulo just has Embercleave. And we're seeing a block, that is kind of showing that. Because right now what Brad can do is say, I'll block here. If you don't have Embercleave, then my Dreadhorde Butcher is going to die, and I'll have the damage be dealt to the Bone Crusher Giant. If you do have Embercleave, you'll put it on your Bone Crusher Giant. First strike damage, you'll kill my Dreadhorde Butcher. That damage can be used to take care of the Burning Tree Emissary. And then, oh, look at me. I've got myself a Claim the Firstborn over here to take that Bone Crusher Giant that's got an Embercleave on it. And that'll be 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So actually, as I mentioned that Brad would probably have the Dreadhorde Butcher damage kill the Burning Tree Emissary, that would just go upstairs, right? Because 2 damage upstairs brings Paulo down to 14. The Bone Crusher Giant is presumably wearing the Embercleave. So then that's 10 damage. And then you've got the other 4 from the Midnight Reaper and the Cauldron Familiar. So what we end up seeing there is no Embercleave at all.
Interesting stuff here. And we see Voltaic Brawler. This is one of the additions that Paulo's running in the deck. The versions that we've seen thus far today don't run it. We've seen a few other options in that spot like Zerta, Goblin, and Kalia, but in this case, he wanted to have the biggest possible beater that he could get, and that ends up being a 4/3 Trampler when it attacks at least twice, thanks to the energy that it produces when it enters the battlefield. So Paulo going big with that 2-drop that he can play off of Burning Tree mana.
Yeah, that's a card that I've always liked that hasn't seen a ton of play, but obviously it's found a home here in Paulo's build of this Gruul deck. Some players are playing it this weekend, others are not. Again, the unique thing about Gruul here this weekend is that there's a lot of different ways to kind of build this strategy, and some players are seeing more success than others. I think coming out of this weekend, though, Marshall, we're probably going to see a lot of people copy Paulo's build given the success that he's had this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if he can do it, I can, right? I just need the same deck list. That's how that.
There you go.
Yeah. It's the same thing.
That's just how it works.
Paulo's going to jam here, and Voltaic Brawler's going to get the triggered ability here as well.
All right, I want to, if I may, really quickly here, we're going to see a company. not the worst company I've ever seen. But I want to give a quick shout out to Dr_Unks in Twitch chat for letting me know that the Cleveland Browns did just score a touchdown. I appreciate you very much because I'm trying to work here and not have any monitors open on the game. I'm trying to be a professional, and it's not easy.
That's really nice. You know, the chat has your back, Zed. They love you, man. They know what you need, and they're here for it.
And some people in chat are like, there's no way he doesn't have it on one of my like windows open. No, I shut him off once I came into this call. I got to keep it straight and narrow over here, okay? I can't be watching the game and Brad v. Paulo and chatting with Marshall.
Brad's lining up blocks here after Paulo did use that triggered ability on the Voltaic Brawler to pump it up and give it trample. And now, once again, we have that Embercleave question very much in the mind of Brad Nelson here as he tries to line up blocks and figure out what the best possible way to prevent the most damage is. It is funny. It really illustrates how powerful Embercleave is. Brad's at 19 and still has to fear for his very life here. Lining up these blocks.
It's terrifying.
It's so funny.
And when you're tapped out, you can only do so much. But again, the thing that makes Embercleave manageable is that you've got this claim the firstborn that can take the creature wearing the Embercleave. And of course, just like I do, Marshall, that Paulo has already thought about that, or is at least thinking about it now and just saying, no, I'm not going to get kind of cheesed out by you taking the thing. Like, that's the assumption that I'm working under. I would be shocked if, like, you claim the firstborn, something has Embercleave, and Paul's like, I didn't think of that crap.
Yeah. Oh, an Embercleave.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening.
I don't think it ever has. Yeah, agreed. And there it is, Embercleave on the battlefield. Only decision left for Paulo is where to put it. Right now, the blocks, our Voltaic Brawler is set to trade off here with a Midnight Reaper. And the Goat is chump blocking, I believe, Scavenging Ooze. And then the Burning Tree Emissary is actually set to get in cleanly here. And there we go. Voltaic Brawler's going to pick up the big sword, run over the Midnight Reaper, crash in for some damage, and we're going to see 7 more damage get through here on Brad Nelson before this combat step is up. Down to 8 he goes from 19, and he's under very serious pressure now. He's going to have to find a way to get out of this mess. Not sure if his deck is really built to do it without the Mayhem Devil around.
I mean, doesn't Paulo just die now? Am I wrong? Don't you just claim the first one with the Voltaic Brawler? That's 10. Oh, excuse me, that's 8.
Oh, okay.
So that's 8, 9, 12, 13. So we should be able to go claim the first one with your Voltaic Brawler. You don't have the energy to pay, which that doesn't matter. So you take that, you deal 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Butcher is 14. Sacrifice the Butcher to the Woe Strider, ding you for 2 more, so that should be 16 flat. And even if Paulo gains a life with Scavenging Ooze, he's still dead.
Incredible.
So this should be
exactly enough to get the job done here.
More proof I'm not watching the Browns game.
That's right. I was just going to say, we got to do combat math with Cedric in real time with unknown information, and boom. 16,
that's 16 through the
16. Ooze. Wow. Incredible backcrack here from Brad Nelson. And Paulo Vitor is going to be kicking himself here as this did not go the way he planned. Thought he was the aggressor, but it turns out Brad was. Boom. Huge combat step. Gets in for 16 damage total in 1 turn and gets the job done. Wow. Nice call, said. Always looking for lethal. That's the thing.
I'm always on.
Players are like, well, could I just win here? And it's like, said, it's turn 1. No, you can't just win here. But it turns out, if you ask that question enough, sometimes the answer is yes.
Yeah, I mean, we wish we could win on turn 1. But, turn 4, turn 5, or turn 6, it doesn't hurt either. So, claim, that game's interesting to me, right? Because I was giving Paul a lot of credit there, and I still am. Of just kind of like, okay, so you have an Embercleave and you don't want to die to claim the firstborn on the on the creature that has Embercleave on it, right? But like all of his creatures in his deck are claim the firstborn a bull, which is not a word, if they're wearing an Embercleave. So I think, like, I don't think you should. Well, I don't know if you should board Embercleave out or not, because how often do you think that happens, Marshall? How often do you think it's I Embercleave you, I deal you a bunch of damage, and then it's like, okay, I'll steal your creature as Embercleave, and I'm going to kill you now.
I'd say probably under 20% of the time. Like, I would assume that most of the time when you get Embercleave down, you win that turn. Maybe not quite 80%, but we have to also factor in the times when they don't have the Claim the Firstborn, or they've already used it or whatever. I also feel that Paulo has some agency there, right? Where he can say, all right, I'm not going to just throw Cleave on the battlefield for a few extra damage here. I'm going to do it when it's super high leverage, when I can't die to the crackback from it, or when I kill my opponent when I play it.
It's just, it's got to,
by the way, said.
Say it again?
Chat had some really hot takes after that one.
Like what?
Well, one of them was somebody named Reader Rabbit said that Cedric was the real winner of that game. That's a solid take.
Okay.
But also somebody said NPV is supposed to be the GOAT.
That doesn't change after one game, folks.
Wow.
Okay. I imagine that in that situation, Paulo said, I'm dead to claim plus something else, which is accurate. It had to be claim plus another thing. Now, that other thing, there are a couple of things that other thing could be. It could have been a second Claim the Firstborn, I believe. It could have been, I think, a Mayhem Devil in combination with what was going on the battlefield. It could have been a Dreadhorde Butcher. So, first of all, it had to be claimed to even get the conversation started, and then it had to be another thing in addition to that. So, the one thing that we don't know was the texture of Paulo's hand. So Paulo may have just had to go for it because he's got like all lands and nothing going on. And the longer that Paulo plays a game against the sacrifice deck, the worse it is, right? Because they're going to find Witch's Oven. They're going to find Mayhem Devil. They're going to find the elements that Paulo's deck can never overcome. So it may have looked bad in quotes, but, what if Paulo's hand is just like a bunch of crappy Lana Worlds or something, right? He's just going to lose the game. So I imagine that risk was calculated appropriately, given that, I don't know, he's the world champion.
Right. Don't forget, there's Burning Tree Emissary hitting the battlefield on 2. Into another Burning Tree. What else can he do? And a Voltaic Brawler. Boom. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 effective power on the board here on turn 2 from Paulo, Vitor, Damo, Rosa. And Brad's going to have his hands full here, no doubt about it.
Fun times at the stomping ground here with Paulo, Vitor. Now,
this is kind of funny. So you see the Voltaic Brawler get stolen, and Paulo has to be thinking, come on, you have a Witch's Oven, right? I just know there's the Witch's Oven as it goes on the stack and sacrifices the Brawler. So it gets in for 3, basically turns the Claim the Firstborn into a removal spell there, and now we see both Burning Tree Emissaries hit the red zone.
Now, does Paulo have a third land and a follow-up? Well, there's a third land. That answers question 1. No follow-up, however. So now Brad, whose draw is not all that great. This deck has a bevy of 3 drops, remember? Woestrider, Mayhem, Devil, Midnight Reaper, and also has some interaction and things that are cheaper. All he can do is pass the turn, and he's not even going to add Gigantha to hand. He's going to, presumably, create a food token with the Goose, or do this instead.
So what are you thinking that Paulo might have if you're in Brad's seat right now? He plays a land on turn 3, does nothing. Then on his 4th turn, just goes immediately into combat and attacks with 2 Burning Tree Emissaries, no land drop. He starts to narrow down pretty quickly, right? I mean, most of his decks cost 1, 2, or 3 mana, or most of his cards, they're not those. If it was an Embercleave, he had a land, he would play the land so that he could get the cleave on the battlefield potentially. That's not it. What is going on here?
I mean, I was going to say, I think there's probably a Bone Crusher there, but I don't really know.
It's weird, right? Is it all lands? Like, do you start to think, you have 3 Embercleaves in hand? Or are you flooding out? Like, this is a very strange sequence to see from Paulo. Leaving 3 mana fallow for an entire turn cycle is very uncommon for this deck. And Cedric's doing exactly what Brad's doing right now, which is looking at the deck list and going, what?
Yeah, I'm like taking a look.
Right? What could it possibly be? And this is how the players do it too, right? Said they have the list available and they'll do process of elimination on it.
Okay.
Cedric's process of an elimination right now as it stands.
Yeah, okay, so Braid, okay, oh, so a Braid, all right, that sacrifice that to which goes off in. Scavenging Ooze is great in creature matchups like this, so getting that off the battlefield matters, and now here's this. So the one thing about Paulo's build of this deck is that he doesn't have four collected companies like a lot of other people do. He's got one. So it would be easy to go like, oh, like he doesn't have land number 4, he's got 2 collected companies in his hand, but like, no, he only plays 1 collected company, so I don't really know. And as things currently stand, like Paulo's draw's not very good. Like a couple of copies of Burning Tree Emissary is not going to get it done.
All right, well, let's see how this plays out going further. As you mentioned, the meager board state that Paulo's been able to put together does not have enough firepower to win this game on its own. Even with Brad Nelson almost taking a turn off last turn, all he did was put Giganta into his hand and play a land. So he's not doing much either with 2 lands and that Giganta in hand. He does have Cauldron Familiar loop going here with the Witch's Oven, though. So he's not under immediate threat, but yeah, Paulo's going to need to come up with some big hitter here to get the job done. We'll see if he has it.
I will say this too. I find this matchup to be very, very hard for Gruul Aggro. Now, this is a step in the right direction.
Okay, Quest to B hits the battlefield. That's the kind of big hitter he needed.
And don't ignore that land that was played, that I believe a Hashtag Oasis. That one matters too. But that's kind of the play that he needed to have here. I like the attack of Llanowar Elves as well, because you should be able to sneak in. You could potentially sneak in a point of damage. I don't really see much reason in holding it back.
Well,
actually, never mind. There's a cat.
Yep,
never mind.
Right. Yeah.
Yep, thank you. I apologize. I forgot that was down there.
Yeah, so the cat will jump in front of a burning tree, but even if the Llanowar Elves came in, the goose would just block it. And we're going to see some Witch's Oven looping happening here, but this is still a significant amount of damage, and Paulo is in that range where, an Embercleave off the top of the library, something like that could be devastating. But look at this. Brad Nelson finds Collected Company, and he has to decide between that and Giganta the Wellspring here.
It's interesting. He thought about casting right away. Now he's taking a moment to maybe consider his options here as Brad. I feel like Collected Company is the highest upside, but we know this deck only has 25 creatures, and here we go. If you knew you were only going to hit 1 creature, and yes, it does bring an 0-1 along with it, but if you knew you were only going to hit 1 creature, you might be better served to just have the 5/5 on the battlefield.
It's incredible. I don't know if it's just you and I or if everybody's running bad, but it feels like the amount of misses or near misses or subpar hits, at least with Collected Company this weekend, has been really high for this deck. It is not optimized for Collected Company, but still, you have a darn good chance of hitting at least 2 things, and we've seen 1 a lot.
So now, what's Paulo's draw step? Because his best draw is Embercleave by a lot, as you mentioned.
This is where things get a little bit scary. How much do you want to respect the fact that there could be a possible Embercleave with Paulo top decking? I mean, he's just cold ripping cards off the top of the library. He's not scrying. Doesn't have any way to get extra cards going. So this is, one of those things where it's unlikely, but could that be the difference between winning and losing? A lot of times Embercleave actually makes it easy on you because you lose to it no matter what. So you just go up and, well, I guess I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. Let's see if Paulo believes enough in the cleave to have drawn 1 off the top of the library, as it would almost certainly spell doom here for Brad.
Embercleave has this way of making things very simple.
It does. It's like, ooh, I can play around it. And then you go, no, I can't. I just have to pretend like they don't have it. And then they always have it. Okay, Cauldron Familiar shenanigans. Woe Strider to start scrying.
Yeah, so Woe Strider's, that's well, how good is that? I think,
is
okay,
good enough to
leave on top.
Is it? Wow.
Well, Brad says it is.
Oh, it must just be insurance for Embercleave. Because if Brad feels that he can maintain this board state, then Embercleave would be the card that could blow that open.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm looking at the Questing Beast and saying, well, that doesn't really answer that. So is it good enough? But It turns out Brad wants the insurance policy here. So Abrade goes into hand, and then I guess we'll just see Gigantha, which is an answer for Questing Beast, as Brad slowly starts to eliminate the ways that this can go poorly and the game can end.
Well, taking a look at the Gigantha, so we put the big 5/5 on the battlefield, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you Oasis your Questing Beast at 7/7 versus 5/5 at that point, and then you're gonna need a little help from the Abrade to take care of the QB, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Gigantha is part of the puzzle to get rid of the Questing Beast, presumably.
Right.
So I think there's a little bit of thinking that needs to be done here, because Brad's also now weighing, well, do I just escape the Woe Strider instead? If I escape Woe Strider, that's a 5/4. Got no one that comes along with it. The old one's not really that important, but scrying, it can chump block, blah, blah, blah. So actually going to go this route.
Okay. Yeah, of course, we have to also see there's a Ramanop Ruins up there for Paulo Vitor.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but the Hashep Oasis is a desert. So that could represent 4 damage over the next couple of turns here from Paulo. So he could actually be very, very close.
Yeah, I actually do wonder if you do any activations of Ramanop Ruins. The question was just answered for me. Paulo says no, I'm not going to do anything with that. So how do we want to use this Oasis, if we want to use it at all? Because it's also worth noting that Hashep Oasis, you have to activate at sorcery speed. You can't do it inside of combat, so you got to do it straight up right now. So 7/7.
And that shows us what Paulo thinks about the game plan here, whether it's better to just keep trying to dominate with Questing Beast, or whether he feels that he can get away with going for this desert sub-plan. And he actually sacrificed the Ramanop Ruins to the Hashep Oasis to get this Questing Beast through. And you can see his thinking here, right? Okay, this one will get it through and effectively force a chump block with the Woe Strider. And then the Gigantha that I know you have in hand can come down, and I can do this again next turn and then get my Questing Beast through that, and then I can try to kill you with it. Now, the interesting thing here is the Abrade could change that math quite strongly, as he can use it to finish off the Questing Beast this turn. And we'll see if he chooses to do so. It would cost him a food.
Nom nom.
Yeah. You don't want to spend your food lightly. But it does seem to be a decent situation. If Brad uses Abrade to finish off Questy B and then plays Gigantha, he'll have the biggest thing on the battlefield. He'll be facing down a 2/2 and a 1/1. It's got to be a decent spot for him. He's also at 9. And there we go. He's going to do it.
Okay.
He fires off the Abrade. Down goes Questing Beast. A second copy of Witch's Oven will allow him to continue that loop. Yep. These are certainly not redundant. They get
another oven. Another oven is a nice draw there.
Yeah. There's a Gruul Spellbreaker, but that looks too little too late here for Paulo, as Brad Nelson is in a decent position on board, not under immediate threat of death, and that feels pretty good.
Well, we'll see what Brad's draw step is. We'll see what Brad's draw step is here in a second. Paulo needs it to be quite bad, and Paulo needs to draw Embercleave the next turn, and that draw step is not great on this turn, but it's good the following turn, in my estimation. So yeah, it's got to be Embercleave right now for Paulo.
Yeah, Paulo's going to need to believe in the cleave big time here. Put it on the Gruul Spellbreaker and go to town, because with the cat and the double ovens here, especially with the priest going and all that, this is going to get out of control very quickly for Brad Nelson, as Paulo Vitor has not been able to capitalize and get those last few points. He had his opponent down to just 4 life, but now Brad's back up to 10. And there's a land now for Paulo. If there's a combat step, there is. The land also gives him enough to have to respect the cleave.
Okay. Yeah.
Look at Brad. He's like, never easy with this guy.
Nope, it never is. Now you got to think about it. You got to keep him honest at the very least.
I love this. And this is just what it's like to play against Paulo Vitor, right? He never makes it easy for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exactly lethal if there's no blocks at all and there's an Embercleave.
And
Although
my
now
favorite,
that I say that, the Cauldron Familiar would actually throw that back off again, wouldn't it?
I mean, a bit.
Yeah, you'd get in for 10 and you'd be at 12 or whatever. So Brad could just say, sure.
I mean, the thing that I love about this, and this is why I actually enjoy covering matches of Magic this way. I know everyone loves themselves some perfect information, and I want to be able to see everyone's players' hands and the hand cams. Think about how less fun this is if we just know Paulo has an Embercleave.
Oh,
This is
yeah,
awesome.
too.
This is actually fun. It's like, okay, he actually does have Embercleave.
Oh, this is just great. Yeah, but this was not lethal either way. Again, the cat is going to put Brad above 10. Now, as it stands, he did choose to block, so he'll soak up 5 of the damage with Gigantha getting thrown under the bus. And the cleave, though, is it a game changer enough here? Because if you look, Brad does not have an answer for it currently. Also, we could see Hashep Oasis making that thing bigger. You know, the combination of double strike, trample, and +3/+3 with an additional +1/+1 on the Spellbreaker could be enough to really pressure Brad's life total even through the cat combo. This is why Embercleave is in the deck, no doubt about it.
Just an outrageously powerful card. I know some people are running like only 2 copies of this card. Martin Yuza among them, who's again having a fantastic weekend with his take on Gruul. But Paulo said, "You know what? I want all 4. I want all 4 of this bust." Ooh.
Hello.
Well, we've done this before, haven't we? How do we do this time?
Let's see.
That's a lot better. Okay.
All right. Now he hit a Woe Strider and a Mayhem Devil here. Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and it might be GG time. Now, Brad is moving now.
Yeah.
We
So
see this
now,
sometimes where the player's just like, oh, I'm going. I'm just, it's time for all the triggers in the world.
that's right. He's got it now. He can simply clear away the blockers and get the job done. He even can activate Priest of Forgotten Gods after that BTE is off the battlefield and take out the last remaining creature and put himself in a position to just win the game. He may be able to seal it up here as well.
Yeah.
Wow, what a collected company there for Brad Nelson. That's much better than what he saw before. You know, I think he was thinking, I'd like to hit perhaps one of my sideboard Reclamation Sages to kill the Embercleave and just make this a lot easier. But as it turns out, it's an easy victory there with what he hit and a win for Brad the Bard Nelson, defeating Paulo Vitor Damo Rosa